Welcome to the onboarding experience with Metabase. Metabase won the poll quite significantly when I was asking people on, okay, which kind of tool should I cover? And this was definitely a surprise to me. So maybe Metabase community was really good in, let's say, getting the people to vote for it. This might be, but this also might be a good sign for the Metabase community. I was quite surprised by it because Metabase is around for quite a long time. I haven't checked the history, but Metabase was the go-to tool when I was doing my first BI projects. And this actually is, just thinking about, this might be around, I don't know, 10 years ago. It's around for quite long. And 10 years ago, it was the tool to go. When I was starting to work with different kind of startups, obviously in these startups, we couldn't add Looker. Looker was the other hot tool at that point of time, but it was more like for if you already have established yourself. So I was working a lot with startups at the point of time. So Looker was the option when you already raised some more money. Then you could move on to Looker because Looker had a much higher license cost. This was still before it was acquired by Google. For most of the startups I worked with, Metabase was the tool to go. I did plenty of Metabase setups when I was brought in. This created a lot of opinions about Metabase. These opinions I'm trying to put as far back as possible because they might not be true anymore. It changed over time a little bit. In the last years, Metabase was still around a lot, but in most of the early startup projects, there were other tools who were more dominant as a first pick. Therefore, I haven't done a Metabase project in a while. For me, it's a rediscovery. I know some of the strengths that I really liked when I was working with it, but also some weaknesses that I was always struggling with, which led to a point where I only recommend it with some disclaimers to companies. The disclaimers are pretty clear and pretty open, and it was always a core approach about Metabase. I'm really looking forward to investigate this. But before we start, let's kick off the session with, let's say, with the guidance or where do we want to lead it. So if you're in this series, you will have access to this Miro board that basically summarize everything, that also I have every use case described here, how I'm approaching this. You can check it out. Let's say, what are basically my framework to pick on this use case. So the use case we're doing right now is onboarding. The first 30 minutes with the tool. So there where you have high hopes and you hope, oh my God, the world is open to me and this might be really great. At least this is how it always feels for me. I love onboarding, honestly. This is my favorite part of a product. Also, as a former product person, I always love to see how people are approaching this. Because we're talking about BI and analytics tools, it's not easy to onboard people on these tools. It's not like a task management tool where you say, hey, create your first task and then check it off and great, you're onboarded. It takes a lot more effort to set up a BI or analytics tool. So I'm always very curious to see how people approach onboarding because it's the first impression. It's like you get into a new house, in your hotel room, any kind of holiday destination. The first impression is quite important. This is why I love this kind of use case a lot. I described it here a little bit. I want to go from the initial website. I want to talk a little bit about the messaging to really see, okay, where does it resonate? What kind of audience do they seem to target? What kind of core promise do they give from a product marketing perspective? Product marketing usually is quite good to communicate what is the core strategy, what is the core message they want to put out that people should try out their tool. I want to really see how well we can go from each step through the onboarding and also get a feeling for who can actually master the onboarding. So do you really have to have quite a lot of, let's say, tech experience, or can you do this without being super deep into different kind of systems? What I'm trying to answer is here, we're going through 3 different clusters: website clarity, setup experience, and technical integration. This is what we actually do in the onboarding. We basically end the onboarding is when we have all the data connected. We created a first chart. And with this, we can say onboarding is finished. So now would be the time to pick up the next use cases. Okay, I want to go through this different kind of questions. So how does it compare to others? How's the value proposition communicated? What are the key features they highlight? Is pricing transparent and understandable? How accessible is the documentation? This is the part we do first. And then we go into setup experience and technical integration. I will open this up once we go into the setup, but let's start with the website. Okay, website clarity. First of all, I definitely like the design. It's very Metabase design. So the tool, the design on the website looks very much how the tool looks like. And I have to say, I definitely like that. There are some tools where the website looks more fancy than the tool itself. I'm always struggling with this because you're always creating, oh my God, I will get this. And then you see what you actually get. And then it's, yeah, not so sure if this is so great. So what I like about Metabase is it really looks like the tool itself, also the whole color set and so on. This is also something I like. I like when tools are opening up, how the tools look like. And there's a lot of discussions about, okay, videos are great, but I think in this case, it totally makes sense. I can just go in here and watch the demo. So I definitely like this as well. From a messaging perspective, they go for don't be a bottleneck. And this already reminds me on the big promise that Metabase already had at the time when I was starting to use it. So one of the Metabase big strategic positioning was always that they make it easy enough for any kind of business team to get their insights without asking the data team all the time. They still stick with that. It came with some problems in the past. One of the big problems I always had with Metabase installation was the governance problem. I worked on some setups that had Metabase for a year and where everything was exploding. Every business team was doing their own kind of things in Metabase because it's pretty straightforward for any business people to do this. The data team was never a bottleneck in that kind of case. It created a setup that was not really usable anymore. So this is how Metabase approaches. You can have a question you want to get answers to. They had 3,000 questions. There were 20 duplicates asking the same things in a slightly different way. It was hard to navigate. Unfortunately, I was not really asked to work on this setup. I was more tasked to do some stuff underneath it. It would be a very challenging project to bring this back into make it very productive and effective. And so this is definitely something I want to look in when I'm now checking out Metabase, if they found some ways to still don't be a bottleneck. So I definitely love this, that they enable a lot of business teams, but then also give the data team some tools to govern this whole process. So to don't become a sprawl of different kind of things. So I'm definitely interested like how they're doing this. You have two options. You can try Metabase Cloud or deploy Metabase open source. We are using the cloud here just also for the sake of, let's say, time and being efficient. Maybe I might do some videos about how to set up the open source version. I love that you have both versions because there are different scenarios. If you have the resources and if you have, let's say, if you really roll it out on big scale, if you really need to have more control about your setup, I love that there's a possibility to deploy it as the open source version. I'm not sure. I might not really cover here what makes the difference between both, because this can make a big difference here. Between if you have an open source version, if you have a free version, the company always have to make decisions about the product. So what goes into open source, what stays in the paid service. Some companies have a quite big feature disparity between the paid version and the open source version. If you compare both, this is definitely something that you have to make sure that you get a good understanding of this. So we will quickly have a look into the pricing in a second. Metabase was always open source, and I like that they still are. We still have both possibilities. Let's go through it. We have a good set of logos here. The tricky thing with logos is you never know if it's still the case. Often you use logos when people use your tool, but you never know how deeply they use their tool, and you also don't know if they still use their tool. Okay, that might all be still true, and there might, let's say, OpenAI might still run everything on Metabase, or maybe just a team in OpenAI. We don't really know. But let's maybe even have a look on the features. It's definitely nice that they at least put the open source version very prominently on the homepage. So this is a nice signal and also a strong signal to the open source version. They actually show you how you quickly can spin it up locally if you want to test it. They still show you, okay, like here we have our GitHub stars, but still they make it prominent that here's the GitHub repository, so you can go there and you can check things out. Okay, then they have some nice testimonials. I really want to see how they make features, what kind of features they're standing out. So the visual query builder was always the strong part of Metabase when they came out. And it was always the core feature that in the end they said, you don't have to write SQL at all. So anyone from the business team can pick this up and can then start to build reports or insights or answer their questions. This was the approach at that point of time, to then generate these kind of dashboards. This will be something that we will test out, how the visual query builder still works, and if it's really approaching self-service analytics in that kind of way. The models part will be the interesting part. I will have a use case where we really look into this, how we can define metrics, how we can find different kind of models. This is what I said, that do we have a way to govern data, to really make sure that people can go crazy with this in their isolated space, but we still make sure that we make it approachable for everyone, so that not everyone comes in there and says, oh my God, this is this jungle of different kind of insights, and we don't really know actually which one is validated, which one we can use, to see how they balance this, because it's a balancing act. There's no answer that basically makes everything good. Then they go in for scalability, so they say, okay, from pre-seed to post-IPO. But you can still say they target startups. But it hasn't really changed a lot. Obviously, you target someone, but it works for other companies as well. Let's say I saw Metabase in a lot of different companies that are far away from being startups. It's a great tool still for a lot of different kind of things. So here they go more for, I would say they go more for, if you really want to scale beyond, let's say you're quick, okay, you do a first kind of setup. So now they're going for kind of enterprisey things. Let's say, okay, I have single sign-on, which at some point becomes important. Then permissions become a very important part. Sandboxing can also become a very important part, however you run your instances. Here it's really mostly for more complicated things. For a lot of data people, SQL snippets might be an important point, because there comes a point of time where people need a specific kind of analysis, which is hard to do within a visual query builder. You still might have things where someone from the data team writes some SQL, makes it available for everyone else, and unlocks more complex reports with it. This is all good to know. I think they do a really good job on the website to set things up. Let's have a quick look into the docs. I know from my past experience that the documentation was always really good. We will look deeper into documentation when we implement all the different kind of use cases, because I will most likely have to look things up. So far, it looks quite good. So let me set up BigQuery. There's also a MetaBot BigQuery setup. Let's see what it does and how fast it is. Okay, the chatbot breaks it down really nicely. Ooh, it does it really nicely. Okay, there's everything already in there. So I might just use it when I'm doing the setup in a second. Okay, they're using external service for that. Okay, that looks good. Good. Anyway, we will pull this up once we do the setup. Maybe they also do a good job in the onboarding, that I don't need the documentation during the onboarding. This would be quite nice. Okay, they have really extensive. So here it's more, let's look really on the depth of the documentation. So we have the classic documentation, which we see here as a reference. And then we have some tutorials, which look quite extensive. Looks like a lot of content. I would not undervalue this kind of part. Also, if you watch my introduction video to the whole series and how to approach the series, these tools have a learning curve. They don't come by default that you can say, oh my God, that's so easy to use. No, you have to learn the tools. You have to really level up step by step. When tools are around for a long time, they have two opportunities. They can have very outdated and not well maintained documentation and learning paths, or they could really stack up nicely over time to give you a different kind of resources. So as you can see here, they have a lot of resources. They have blogs, they have events. They also have quite a good YouTube channel. So I'm a subscriber to the YouTube channel for a longer time. And even when I don't really do a lot of Metabase projects, I still from time to time watch the videos, because I'm just interested what they are bringing out. And they do a really nice job in these videos. In 10 minutes, you quickly can see, okay, this is in the newest release and so on. I haven't been in the community, so therefore I don't know how well the community works. It looks like it's a discourse board that you can have. As we can see, people are definitely active. It's not like we see here 60 days ago, the last kind of activity, but obviously I don't know, and this will be not part of the series to analyze, okay, how good people are actually getting answers in the community. It's just, okay, we have one place where you can ask questions. Quickly, last check on the pricing models. As we said, there's also the possibility to open source, which is still here. It's always a good argument when you can still see the open source model in the pricing page dominant and not somewhere down as a link. Hey, by the way, we also have a community edition. It's open source. You can install it here. So at least this is some kind of signal for me that they take open source still serious. I always like the approach that what they take here with to showing, okay, which kind of companies are using the different kind of plans to give you an idea, okay, which kind of bucket I actually fit in. It's interesting that OpenAI is still in the Pro one, not in the Enterprise one, but it might be for a reason. Okay, we have different kind of plans. As you can see here, they basically have a baseline fee, which includes users. You pay 85 and you get 5 users already included, and then you have to pay seat-based. I would say, we will see this along the series, it's the most common model, I would say. Some just go for seat-based, so then they make it a little bit more. There are tools who make it a little bit more intransparent. They say, hey, you just cost, I don't know, $5, $10 per user, but actually when you get started, you have to at least get 5 licenses for 5 users. So it's more transparent how Metabase is approaching it here. It says, okay, this is your baseline, but you get 5, and then for everyone else you pay this. And then Pro costs more. The interesting thing is how they distinguish between both, and it looks like they do it mostly about features. You get more features. Here, obviously, you get the self-hosted deployment. What does this mean? This would be interesting to find out. I would assume this is a supported self-hosted deployment, so that in the end you can still deploy it on your own infrastructure, but you get the features that are not available in the open source version. You still can run it in your own environment, which for some companies is essential, but you're not restricted on the features. They make a separation between the different kind of features that you get. They also make, interestingly, a separation between classic BI and embedded analytics, which is quite interesting. It looks like an important use case. So I will not cover embedded analytics in this series, but I might do this in the future. For everyone who's thinking about what's actually the difference, embedded means you use Metabase to enrich your existing product, for example, with user-facing analytics. So you might have a software as a service, and then you have a part which is called reports, and then obviously you have to build all these report parts, and this is something which you can then do with embedded analytics. So you can use Metabase to control access to this different kind of reports, what has been shown. And so you can build this in Metabase. You basically maintain the whole thing in Metabase, but you surface it in your product. It can be really powerful extension to your tool. And it's a direction that a lot of these BI tools went, or they are going at some point of their journey. They're going for embedded as well. Obviously, you have to find a slightly different business model. The pricing doesn't really change between business and embedded. If I really would go for embedded, I would check out how embedded actually works. They have something like Metabase without a database. You can just run it with your CSVs and spreadsheets. It looks like they have a user base that needs this case, and maybe it makes sense. You get storage you can put in your CSV. That's an interesting take. They're going there because there are a lot of companies who don't have databases or data warehouses yet, but they still have reporting needs. I might not go into this because not everyone has this kind of use case, but it would be interesting to just check it out. You have the typical long feature list comparison. You should go in there if you really figure out what is the right kind of plan for you to start. What I like about the pricing page is it's very transparent. I think it's consumable. Obviously, figuring out pricing and comparing features is often not that easy, but I think they make an effort to make it as transparent as possible. Let's get into the setup experience. I want to check how intuitive the initial setup process is, then how much technical knowledge you actually need, how clear are the guides and tooltips, do I need the documentation while I'm doing the setup or not, how long does it take until the first insight is achieved. Let's see. I will not heavily edit this, so I will not really remove a lot of stuff out there, so you will have a clear time indication how long it will take me. Let's get started. Okay, so interestingly, we're going to store checkout. It just looks funny that we are, let's say, it looks like we're a little bit into. So we're doing Metabase. So 225, if I want to test it later again. Let's continue. Okay, so we have to give in some information. That's my company. Then, okay, I have it in BigQuery. Ah, no, they're just asking, okay, where we have it. Okay, this makes sense with the new direction. Okay, let's go with this. Yes, I agree, without checking the terms of services like I usually do. All right, so they asked me which one do I want to do. I have a 14-day trial. Since I do everything in 1 week, I think I can definitely do this in the trial. I will start with the starter one. The trial is not that I can unlock every feature. I already have to pick things, which sometimes can be a bit complicated, but that's fine. I would go for a starter one. Yeah, I would take this DNS. I hope it's still available. I haven't tested it before. It's nice that I can choose hosting regions. This might be really important, especially if you are in the EU. Obviously, if you're in the EU, you have to check out what kind of data Metabase is storing on their systems. Some BI tools are really just passing the SQL through and getting the results back. They don't do a lot of caching, maybe just some meta. This is something you have to check. If we have the options, we have Europe and Frankfurt here, which at least would say if I'm a EU-based company, I can make sure that my data stays in the EU region. I already have to put in my card. This is something which I personally don't like, but obviously find the person on this planet who personally like this. It's a product decision. They just want to make sure that I'm committed, but it also means I really have to be careful with that I have to cancel this subscription. Credit card is added. We're setting up your Metabase. It's not immediately available. It takes some time. I can watch a video, which is cool. See what Metabase can do in under 2 minutes. Nice. That's a nice one. You don't have to wait with me. Okay. They made it really nice that the video almost fits to how long it does take until the Metabase setup is ready. It cut off a little bit before. I was quite interested to see how I set up the SQL queries, but maybe this one is the link. Let's open this up here. This is the documentation for it. Great. It's nice that I immediately have this here. The video was really nice. It was more like, hey, I show you different kind of things. Yeah, I like it. You have to wait, but it was really just 2 minutes. It was pretty quick and straightforward. Okay, let's get started. I will pick English. You can call me like that. Okay, I have to create a password. Good. I don't know why I have 2 passwords now. So this is a kind of question mark I have. I will find it out along the way. Okay, so what will you use Metabase for? Self-service analytics, my own company, embedding analytics into applications. So they are really strong on this. Okay, I already know I want to do it for self-service analytics. Okay, now we can add my data. I'm going for BigQuery. Okay, so let's call it new BI BigQuery project. Okay, so my project ID is data. Again, if you set up BigQuery, it would be helpful at least to be used for authentication. If you're new to, let's say, know BigQuery, this might be a challenge because not really 100% clear what you need. And then add a JSON file. If you watch the other video, see if someone does it differently. I'm setting up tools all the time that work on my BigQuery instance. For me, I already know what to do here, but this is not self-explaining. Service account, JSON file. If you have done this not before on BigQuery, this can get you a lot of question marks. I, for example, always have the same kind of question marks. What kind of permissions do I need? Let's see if this one is helping us here. Connect your database. Then we have here adding managing databases. Then we have BigQuery. Let's see if we can get there. I usually don't like if I have to jump already here in the documentation. It wouldn't be too hard to put here next to it a nice live box which tells you, okay, this is how you create it. If you're not sure how to create a service account, this is the link to the Google documentation. Maybe a lot of people already know how to create this, but here are the permissions that we need. So this, for example, what I'm interested in, but I have to distill it here. Okay, but here we have the permissions. We can work with this. I don't want to share all my data sets. I have to write them out by hand. I would love to have just a selection, but I already have to test the connections. I'm usually not a friend of doing a lot of manual stuff because now I have to look up things. It's not a hard critique, but I'm always looking for how to make it really smooth. Okay, we are now in BigQuery here, so this is the one that I need. New BI tool data model. If you want to learn more about the data model, there are some separate videos in the general meta section where you can see how I have built the data model, how I've generated the data, and how I've modeled the data. If you're interested in that, let's connect the database. Okay, that was quite quick. I hope they check the connection. Usually you get this, okay, we're testing. So we're in there, but again, I think it took us 40 minutes. I think it can be improved by just providing a little bit more context. I could have just gone for all data sets. Most of the cases this might be all right, but since I have so many different kind of projects in my own BigQuery projects, I need to make the selection here, so it might be different from others. But what they do really nicely here is they already serve my different kind of tables that I have in here. Do I want to get some insights from OBT core metrics? So these are the tables that I'm using. That's nice. I really like that. So let's go for it. Okay. Yeah. So I think this is just a row count, huh? See these OBT metrics. Yeah, this is just a row count. I definitely like the idea, but I don't know. Do they do different kind of things? Oh no, yeah, no, they just, okay. I like the idea that they do something like this, but they don't really deliver a lot. Anyways, let's say, I really want to just quickly see if the data, but it looks like the data connection has worked. Let's quickly get some metrics out here. I have different models. What does it mean? I have collections, our analysis. That's not what I'm looking for. Picking your starting data. It looks like I can prep things here. That's interesting later for the self-service part. I don't have metrics yet, but I have tables. These are my tables where I can get started. That makes sense that I have a use case later where we figure out these two things, so I will definitely have a look. We start with OBT metrics. Okay, so what are we interested in? I want to have the number of sessions, but not between. Okay, this is filters. Okay, maybe I don't need filters. I have to get something from here. Let's see. What do I need? Do I need a count of rows? Most likely. Okay. Count by. Okay, and then I can pick the sessions. But I think it's not a count because it's an OBT, so I'm summing up. Okay, then this is the wrong one. Then I need to found sum. Okay, sum of this. Okay, it's a bit confusing why we do this. Let's see how it looks. We have 90 million sessions. Let's do a visualization because this looks interesting. We're missing the time dimension. Maybe this was what they had with time. Okay, show the editor again and then pick by report date. Yep, by months, that's good. Let's visualize that. This is what I meant with the learning curve. So this is the Metabase dialect. There are some parts where I would say, I don't really get why I have to do it, but that's fine. This is how you can learn things. The interesting thing is they definitely take a slightly different approach to, we will see when we say some other tools. So I would say the common approach is that you have the configuration up on the left because this is really tamed for analysts. So analysts are used to, let's say, to do a lot of configuration here. It's a kind of Tableau lookup way how people have learned it. So they take a different approach here. They let you craft your things and then visualize, and you can jump between both, which I think is fine. They make the visualization very present here. Let's say total sessions by months. And we have all time, but maybe we can do it, I don't know, last 6 months, something like that. Okay, and then we can put it in a collection. I put it in my personal one. Create a new dashboard. I will already, let's say I already create, okay, this is just the first test. So we will create dashboards in the next use case. This was something which I always liked. I always liked the dashboard experience because I like this grid design. I also like how much flexibility it gives me. I still have to say, I still the dashboard experience a lot. Also the visual appearance of Metabase. So I like how the charts look like. Okay, this This is also quite nice that you quickly just can go through the different kind of visualization options, and it doesn't do big reloads, or it's really, let's say, so I quickly can see, okay, no pie chart, we won't go for pie chart here, but maybe we want to have area. I definitely have a tendency to do monthly reports and bar charts. So this is nice. Obviously we have to do some, but it didn't took, we forgot to save. No, it has a new one. Okay, that's quite nice that it does something like this. So I went from here, I went from the dashboard into it. It's now asking me if I do some edits and I would save them. It starts me if I want to do a new one or not. This is quite helpful. It's often a pain. Most of the BI tools, I overwrite things that I have just done before. If they really take care of it, that's really nice. So now we're back to the old one. Let's go back to the visualization again. It just creates a new version of it. I like that. Can I replace? Yeah, I can replace it. I was not sure when I click save if I also overwrite the name because the name has changed a lot. I like that. It still has some weird configuration here. So let's see how we can do this. Can we rename this stuff? Yes. Total sessions. That doesn't really look. Okay, we also have some formatting options. We need this. I guess I can also change this in general administration. For example, I could now go just for European ways of writing things, which would be like this. Okay, and then I can save again. Okay, cool. Now I could go into, I also like this, so I can drill down. We will go into drill downs a little bit more, but let's quickly do this. What is happening here? Okay, I'm now going down on a weekly base. As you can see, the simulated data set is quite consistent, what it's generating on a weekly base. Definitely something I have to fix in the future. Okay, let's go back. What else can we do? Automatic insights. X-ray. By post MRR. I'm not really sure. Maybe this doesn't make sense because I haven't prepared anything yet. It's interesting that it does something like that. So let's say a kind of automatic analysis, but I think I have to prepare more, that it makes sense. Right now, it's quite random here. All right, but this concludes our onboarding. Let me quickly review the technical experience. I would say somewhere in the middle. It depends on what you will connect. The database connection part is always the tricky part in these setups. They could have done it a little bit easier. There are ways to easily connect to BigQuery. For example, I think there's also an OAuth connection possibilities. At least I had tools that were using it. It's not very commonly used because I think most of the companies prefer service account. So I had to look up in the documentation to find out. I'm setting this up quite often, so for me it's not really hard to get. For anyone else, if you're setting this up and you never have connected any kind of database and someone says, hey, we have BigQuery, so try to set up, it might take a little bit longer for you to do. But I would say in general, it's doable. So it's not hardcore technical, somewhere in the middle. In general, it was quite straightforward. I don't like that I have to put my credit card on file, but this is a business decision. They might lose people at this point. Maybe this is a filter they want. So I respect that. I now have to put in my calendar again that I cancel it again because I don't want to get charged. Again, if you have this, it's my recommendation, put it in a calendar because I'm someone who immediately forgets about this. I got to the chart pretty well. So I like that they had this preview things where they say, hey, look, we just checked out your data, maybe just check it out. The results were not really nice, but it's not easy to build this, to automatically get to something like this because all the data looks different. It's really hard to figure out. One possibility could be that you check the tables and you check what kind of tables are they. And for example, if you discover a one big table format, then you know, okay, they are already pre-calculated metrics. But again, this is not going so far. Okay, it was really fast. Once I had connected the data, connection to the database was fast. The data was pretty quickly in there. This whole thing is extremely smooth. I can go through different kind of visualization. It shows something. I assume they're caching stuff in between to enable this. This would be a deeper analysis to really see what is hitting on BigQuery. But this will not be part of any of the use cases here yet. This is the onboarding experience. Next up, we will create a daily check-in dashboard. This will be more about establishing the first kind of metrics, first kind of charts. I might already look into how I can create the first kind of metrics because I will reuse a lot. And also to play a little bit around with different kind of chart types to see how we can visualize things. Check out the next video.